Good morning grade 11s, I hope you are all still doing well. I finally got around to analyzing and making a video of the African pot for you guys, so I hope you find it useful. I'm sorry about the problem with the sound. You'll hear a slight noise in the background. I hope that doesn't bother too much. And then also I will be putting up this document containing all the notes on our group so that you can use that as well. Right, let's dive into the African pot. This poem is an excellent illustration of the poet as an artist. Remember, just as the artist uses different colors of paint as well as different painting techniques, so the poet uses his words to paint a picture. In this poem we will look at a few poetic devices that we don't find a lot in our other prescribed poems. This poem has three important features which we will discuss in more detail. Firstly, the poet attaches symbolic meaning to an object. Secondly, the poet uses functional white. And lastly, there is a striking lack of punctuation. Let's read the poem and see what we can discover. Right, so I'm going to read the poem one time just so that we can get a general idea, and then we will go into it in more detail. Right. The African pot. It is round and fat and squat. It has no handle and the rim has no spout. At first it seems as if the colors have no coordination and no rhythm. The yellow and brown stripes circle the pot in quick diagonals. I puzzle over the absence of the handle, and then suddenly I think of a young woman, wearing beads, walking to a river, with the pot gracefully balanced on her head. And then the colors begin to rhyme. Yellow zigzagging around the top makes me think of harvest time, of golden corn, of dances around an autumn fire, of ripe fruit, and of men drinking home-brewed beer. And as I stroke the brown, I can almost feel the full earth between my fingers, earth that echoes the thunderous stamp of warriors going to war, earth that offers bass accompaniment to dancing feet. I can almost see an ox pulling a plough, steered by a man of infinite patience, making ordered upturned loam. The maker made this pot with a song in his heart and a vision in his eyes. Lifting it up, I can almost hear him say, "I am man. Life is but clay in my hands. Creation is at my fingertips." Right. Now, let's first address the lack of punctuation in this poem. You can see there's almost no punctuation whatsoever in this line over here. Not that one. Sorry. In this line over here, there's one time that the poet punctuates the I. It could have been a typing error, or maybe he wants us to realize something, which we will look at later. So if you thought about the lack of punctuation, it could refer to, remember this poem is about village life in an African village, or the culture of people in an African village. Now people are often they don't find the need really to read and write, so you know, that could be why the speaker or the poet dispenses with punctuation in this poem, why he doesn't really use it. Also, it gives us the feeling of simplicity. There's nothing that's really standing out in the way of punctuation. Just as with village life, there's probably not a lot going on. No one is really seen as more important than another, so it's quite a simplistic kind of life. Right, if we look at the first two lines here, it is round and fat and squat. That is the poet's, or the speaker's, sorry, it is his identification or his description of the pot. It gives the reader an idea as to what the speaker is looking at and holding in his hands. Right? We also get the idea that he does not see anything special in this pot, or not yet at least. Right, so he's just saying it's round and fat and squat, and that's what it is. Nothing special to it. Then if we look at the second stanza, sorry, not the second stanza, if we look at these two lines, it says it has no handle and the rim has no spout. Sorry, just the one line. It has no handle and the rim has no spout. Now if you have you've probably heard that nursery rhyme, I'm a little teapot, short and stout, this is my handle and this is my spout. Have you heard that nursery rhyme? It probably has some English or British origins, because as we all know, the British are quite famous for their love of tea, or the English, and they are also usually seen as a very sophisticated people. So in this line, the poet is commenting on the fact that this pot has no sophistication to it. It's very simple, and it's not, again, not very special. Then if we look at these lines, he says at first it seems as if the colors have no coordination and no rhythm. Now here the speaker uses enjambment. You all know what enjambment is. It's when a line doesn't really end specifically, it carries over into the next line. So in this line, in these two lines, the speaker uses enjambment to show the reader his feelings regarding this object that he is observing. The rhythm of the poem is clumsy in these lines to indicate how the poet thinks that the pot was simply made without much thought. Alright. We also get the idea that he doesn't understand the pot. It doesn't hold any meaning for him. Here he says the yellow and brown stripes circle the pot in quick diagonals. So he's also commenting on the way, that these lines were just added to the pot to make it seem interesting. He thinks that it doesn't really have any functionality to it. Right. Then if we let's just see. Right, so in stanza 1 we get the general idea that the speaker is not very impressed with the object that he is observing. He thinks that it is not very sophisticated, as we saw in line 2, and that it was made without care. When we look at the rest of the poem, however, we can see the first stanza as a comment on how we often think less of things that we don't understand, and that when we take the time to examine things we don't understand, we might gain a deeper appreciation and respect for it. So let us look at the rest of the poem, see if it can give us any, if it can explain the existence of this pot any further. Right, if we look at this first line in stanza 2, the speaker says, I puzzle over the absence of the handle. Now when we think about, so he basically says he is confused that there is no handle attached to this pot. Now when we think of a handle, what is a handle used for? It's used for carrying things or making things easier to carry. And you would think that when you create a pot, it would be especially important to include a handle, because how else would you carry something like this? Especially a round thing, it's always difficult to carry. So he says, Why did the maker not include a handle? Why didn't he make it easier for us to carry this pot? But then when we look at this line, he says, and then suddenly I think of a young woman wearing beads walking to a river with the pot gracefully balanced on her head. Why would he then suddenly think of a young woman wearing beads walking to a river with the pot gracefully balanced on her head? Now we get the idea that this young woman is from an African village where they might have to walk somewhere to go and collect water, because there's no running water in the village. Let's see what I wrote here. So for these three stanzas over here, if you have ever seen an African woman carrying something, it was probably balanced on her head. This is quite a remarkable achievement, as I'm sure most of us would have a tremendously hard time balancing all kinds of things on our heads. Thus, in this line, the speaker talks about the uniqueness of the African culture and its people, in much the same way that the absence of a handle on the pot in line, line 7, makes the pot unique. Alright, so now he is beginning to understand the significance of this pot, why there's no handle. So it talks about life in an African village. And then in the third stanza he says, and then the colors begin to rhyme. Now it starts to make sense to the poet why the maker of the pot, or the potter, why he added these specific colors, and now he's beginning to understand the process of creating the pot and all the symbolic that is attached to it. He says yellow zigzagging around the top. Remember, he talked about the brown and yellow stripes in the first stanza. He says yellow zigzagging around the top makes me think of harvest time, of golden corn, of dances around an autumn fire, of ripe fruit, and of men drinking home-brewed beer. If you look at all the aspects covered by these lines, you will notice that they all have to do with the color yellow. Corn on the cob, or golden corn as he says here, the falling leaves in autumn, the fire around which the dancers are dancing, and also beer, all have the color of yellow, or they are all different shades of yellow. The speaker is impressed by the way in which the potter took all these different aspects of life in an African village and captured them in one single color. Alright. Also, in these lines we deal with that functional white that I was talking about in the introduction. Let's see. In these two lines we come across the use of functional white. Now, functional white is when a poet specifically doesn't use the normal spacing that we would use when writing prose, and he instead maybe puts some words apart from the rest. Remember that a poem not only consists of the words in it, but also the blank spaces around the words. Much like when an artist has a piece of canvas and he paints something on it, the paint means something, it creates a picture, but also the white spaces add to that picture. Alright, so remember that a poem not only consists of the words in it, but also the blank spaces around the words. That is why short lines are effective. Remember, you sometimes get one word that's placed alone in a line, and that's usually used when the poet wants to emphasize that word. And it is effective because the space around it creates tension. And it also places the emphasis on those words. In these lines that we have here in the poem, we can guess that the poet has used functional white to indicate the passage of time. The villagers had to put in some hard work, for example here in the harvest time, and now they can enjoy the benefit in the form of this golden corn and ripe fruit. So you can see that the white space here indicates that there was some work done, and now there is you can reap the benefits. And also of men drinking homebrewed beer after all the work was, after all the work is done, you know, the planting and taking care of the crops and harvesting it. Now the people in the village can sit back and enjoy the fruits of their labor. Right, then when we go on to the next stanza, he says, and as I stroke the brown, I can almost feel the full earth between my fingers. Let's stop there for a second. What is interesting here is that he, instead of just looking at the pot, as he did with the yellow part, he's now physically engaging with the pot, and we can see that with this word, as I stroke the brown. Here he might be commenting on the way that we have to physically engage with the earth, so that there can be some product arising from that engagement. Right. Sorry. Okay, so the physical engagement with the pot also relates to the way in which this tribe of people had to engage with other tribes to establish their territory. We see it in this line: earth that echoes the thunderous stamp of warriors going to war. And then also this tribe had to engage physically with the earth. We can see it in these lines. I can almost see an ox pulling a plough, steered by a man of infinite patience. So this is the people in the village actively, as I said, engaging with the soil and the earth that they are based on, in order to create a home for themselves. First, they created a home by going to war with other tribes, and they probably beat them. This is where the dancing feet came from, their victory dances after they have won the war, and then they could start to establish a life for themselves. And as we know, all life needs sustenance. You need water and food, and this is where their agricultural practices come into place. Also, just interesting to note, in this last line, or actually these last two lines, sorry, let's use these last three lines. I can almost see an ox pulling a plough, steered by a man of infinite patience. Again, commenting on the personality of these people. They have the patience to put in hard work and know at the end of it all they might benefit. And then the last line, making ordered upturned loam. So he's making rows of dirt in which seeds can be planted and new life can grow. And the poet comments here in that last line on people's ability to create order from chaos, and that is probably the thing that sets us apart from other animals, is that we can create order, and in so doing make a fruitful existence. Right, now in this last stanza, the speaker's thoughts turn to the maker of the pot, or the potter. He says the maker made this pot with a song in his heart and a vision in his eyes. Now, do you remember the first time when the speaker dealt with the pot in this first stanza? We saw that he didn't really he didn't regard it as much. He didn't have very much respect for it. He thought it was carelessly made, without much thought. But now that he has studied the pot and thought about all the meaning attached to the making of this pot, he can now definitely say that the maker made this pot with a song in his heart. So he made it with great care and with great joy, and also a vision in his eyes. By that he means that the potter wanted the person observing the pot to get a glimpse into African life, and to see what it is like living in a village, and how people have created an existence for themselves. By when the observer examines the pot. Right. Let's just see. Right, the spot that once seemed strange and confusing to the speaker now holds great meaning. This deeper meaning is discovered in the last stanza. Now, let's just read these last two stanzas quickly. The maker made this pot with a song in his heart and a vision in his eyes. Lifting it up, I can almost hear him say, I am man. Life is but clay in my hands. Creation is at my fingertips. So, in this line here, he includes all of humanity, because everyone reading this poem is not a man. As you can see, he left out that article. He says, I am man. Remember, we refer to humankind as man. So now he includes all people around the world in his message that says, life is but clay in my hands, creation is at my fingertips. And what does he mean by that? Let me read you the whole comment that I made here. The stanza contains the message that the potter intended when he made the pot. Firstly, when we look at the literal meaning of the words in this stanza, we get the sense that the potter was confident in his skills and knew that he could bend the clay to his will in order to create a final product that he could be proud of. Then there is also the deeper sentiment that humankind has the ability to form life in a way that is suited to them. Because humans have free will, we can change our circumstances in any way we want. So that's what he means when he says, life is but clay in my hands. Remember, clay, you can form clay in any way you want. So he basically asks the questions, what are you going to do with the circumstances that you have been given? Because you can change your life at any point and in any way that you want. In the last line, sorry, let me just see here. Because humans have free will, we can change our circumstances in any way we want, just as the people in the African village that is described in this poem has carved their own path throughout their history. In the last line, where the speaker says, creation is at my fingertips, he reminds us that we have inherited the earth, and even more, we have inherited all creation. And what we make of it is our own choice. And yes, that's actually kind of a scary message, because as we have seen, we humans don't really always do a great job of taking care of the earth and of creation in general. So maybe we should put the same, or we should treat God's creation with the same love and care that went into the making of this pot. Alright, I hope this discussion was helpful for you guys. This is the first time I've done something like this, so if it's a bit, how can I say, unorganized or incoherent at some parts, I apologize. Hopefully I will get better at this. And please let me know if there's any suggestions that you have, or any other things that you don't understand. I will be glad to listen to your inputs and change or amend the way I analyze the poem. Right, that is it for now. I will also put this this document with the comments, the notes that I made, on the group, so that you can study even further. I hope you found this helpful, and have a nice day.